Nothing can stop us because the wheels are turning. We're having a great time. It's an awesome Friday. And if you're listening to this on the audio, you're obviously getting this on your Monday, Tuesday, or wherever you listen to your podcast. You awesome people out there. My name is John Kovach Jr. I'm the host of the Champion Circle and the Circle of Knowledge podcast, brought to you by Champion Circle Networking Association. I'm the founder, host, and creator of that, and just excited to bring back a great speaker, interviewee, and person who's going to enlighten us with some awesome information. Just so you guys know, I have the opportunity of meeting great people from all over the world, from a variety of platforms. And I'm really excited to introduce you to our speaker and guest today. Before we do that, I just wanted a quick reminder and just an awesome opportunity to just share that the 13 Steps to Riches is on fire right now. Our 13 volume book series is out there, and looks like I got a little connectivity issue there, but our 13 Steps to Riches book project, book number 5, volume number 5, comes out in 11 days, March 15th. Go check it out. It's going to be on the principle of imagination, and that principle used to obtain or think and grow rich. It's amazing. So we're super excited about that. But without any further ado, I'd like to take a moment here and introduce our speaker and guest for today. This individual you're going to learn to love. She's got an amazing background. I'm really excited for you guys to understand just a little bit more about Amy, and Amy's going to teach you guys some really great stuff. But Amy's got just after seeing how the ability to talk sports gave her the upper hand as a woman in business, Amy created Last Night's Game to give her friends the same advantage. Last Night's Game empowers its readers to join the sports conversation, which the three most important conversations at a party are politics, and sports is one of them. And I'm just going to throw it out there and just say that the third controversially could be, I don't know. Let's move on, but it could be some really good stuff. Because, some people don't really know where to start with sports conversation. So this is amazing. Amy is a mentor and judge in various international and national business plan competitions. She was featured at TEDx in OU and Phoenix Startup Week. That's amazing. She's a TEDx speaker. She also serves on the board of directors for Irish Angels, based in Chicago. She's a businesswoman. She's an amazing leader. She knows investing. She knows a lot of stuff. She's got a resume longer than anyone else's I've ever seen. It's exciting, and I just can't wait to bring her on stage and get to know her a little bit more. But Amy, thank you so much for joining us on the Circle of Knowledge podcast and joining us today. I know you just got back into town from a business trip, but welcome, and I'm so glad you're here.
Thank you, John. I'm so happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. And I always kick off the show by asking the open-ended question, which you're going to love, is could you tell us a little bit about how you became you today? Like where did it all start? Like, let's go back to young Amy, and you're still young. So younger Amy, and tell us a little bit about your journey and how you came to be who you are today.
I think probably like a lot of your guests that you've had, I would say it's been a broken road. I mean, it really, what I wanted to do and what I wanted to be when I grew up didn't really always, it didn't go as planned. I was that child that my mom always said, you're going to be a lawyer because you argue with me all the time. You're a pain in my rear end. And you talk a lot. So that was sort of my mom always laughed about that. And, I think that the beauty of that is I was always in trouble for talking at school. I was always in trouble for chatting with other people. And somehow that came to full fruition to have a business that teaches people and helps people join the conversation. So it's kind of funny that it comes full circle, but it's been a journey. I mean, I've lived in a bunch of different countries, different places, and it's sort of just kind of taken a life of its own. And I like so many people, I just tried not to force everything and just trust my gut and let things happen. And I think what I've realized in the past couple of months have been really a teaching moment for me is to step back and stop trying to force things to happen, to step back and let them happen as they will and stop resisting and pushing and things. So that has been kind of a, I guess, a story of the way trusting your gut and going that way is kind of how I ended up here.
Amazing. And some of my listeners might. I bring people onto this podcast. Professionals. They're pause here for a second. It sounds like we're having. There we go. We're back. Okay, I think my internet's being weird because I live in the mountains. But my listeners are probably thinking this, which is, what would you call yourself? Because you're a serial entrepreneur, you're a quasi business owner. You've got so many interests, and you've got a lot of pieces moving. But like you just described, like, don't force anything. Like, just let things happen the way they're supposed to happen, and use your skill sets to do so. But what would you personally call yourself? What would be your title if you would give yourself one?
I would probably say something like global citizen. And I say that because, like I said, moving quite a bit, you learn that the world is really small. It doesn't matter where you live. The people, whatever country you're in, the people want the same things. They want to have food for their families, shelter, and be safe. End of the day, that is such a standard across the board. And so I think that has just enlightened me to just talk a lot, especially to my son. I have a 3-year-old, and we talk a lot about what we're grateful for. And sometimes he's grateful for his truck or whatever, but sometimes he's grateful for the house when it's raining or things like that. And so I think that so much of me is business, and I really do, sadly, for better or for worse, pride myself on being that working person. But I think so much of it, and what I've continued to learn throughout my career, is to step back and just be grateful for even just the small things, because it's so hard with social media and everything else to not compare yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
you're looking at someone going, okay, well, that person has 100,000 followers on Instagram. What am I doing wrong? Or I'm not Mark Zuckerberg, which I'm not, because I'm not in a black sweatshirt. But I think it's one of those that the more I really step back and look at it, is we are all part of this, the cog of the wheel of this world, and it's really important to step back and sometimes be grateful for those little things and know that those other things will come.
Amazing. Great answer. That was the right answer.
Thank you.
I know these questions are very vague, but I love the personalization to it. I'd love to dive a little bit into the journey and the creation of last night's game, and tell us a little bit about what that came from, where that stemmed from. Obviously, you had some experience in your life that's sports related, or anything that drove you to create this. Can you tell us a little bit about the creation process and what that was all about?
Sure. So I imagine, much like you, John, when you are a creative, something happens in your life that makes you think, I need to do something about that. And so I was probably about 20 years old, and I was working as an intern for the Arizona Diamondbacks.
So
And
basically, like 2 years ago, right?
2 years ago, that's exactly
Okay.
it, 2 years ago. And so I had all these girlfriends who were working in male dominated industries, as was I, and they didn't know anything about sports. And I thought, this is such an advantage that I have, to be able to walk into a room of men, because that's what we were doing all the time, and give myself, be a bit of a differentiator, that I had something to talk about. I knew what was going on, and it wasn't. I'm not some sports fanatic. I played sports. I played soccer for 1 year. I was horrible. I hated it. I'm probably maybe not cut out for team sports. I cried, all the things. And so my mom was like, please go back to the dance studio. This is not for you. And so, it's for me, what I realize is just having those little nuggets are such a great way to, as you kind of mentioned, when you go to a party, you talk about the weather, which lasts a whole like whopping 3 minutes. And then you have to find something else to sort of try to make this connection with someone. And for me, sports is that, because it also allows you to dive into a lot of other things. If you start with something, let's think about something that was happening today. Paralympics are happening today, and they
Right.
opened this morning in Beijing. And so you might talk about, if you've been to Beijing, you can talk travel, you can talk about your past life as an athlete, because we know lots of people who have past lives as athletes, love to talk about them. But you talk about your children. I mean, all these different things. And I think there's such a great foray into conversation by just knowing that little nugget. And so basically at that point, I was an intern. So I was a senior in college. I was working probably 60 hours a week during the season, set maybe more, for a whopping like 5.25 an hour. Right. And And so I talked to my brother, who is really the reason I know is what I know about sports,
Mhm.
and said, "Hey, we need to figure out how to find a way to share the cool side and the story side of sports with people, not just this box score, because that's not exciting."
Yeah.
And so he was in high school at the time, and he said, "Yeah, you work too much, and I'm in high school, so no." But so that was, gosh, that was probably 14 years before we started last night's game. I went on and did different things in my career. I worked for the Diamondbacks up until for about 8 seasons and ran their community relations department in the foundation. And then um, took a couple different other jobs. My husband and I moved to Singapore, and we moved back to the States. It was right before Thanksgiving, and I knew no one was going to hire between Thanksgiving and New Year's, because that's just sort of how that works. And so I said to my brother, "Hey, you're here for Thanksgiving. What if we sit down and just try this idea?" Because MailChimp and Squarespace and all those things were around then. They weren't around 14 years before that.
Mhm.
And so we just went for it. And I mean, that's one thing I will always say is just go for it, because there, I think it's the lean startup that says if your product, your when you roll it out is really pretty, you've waited too long. And ours was ugly. It started off as a Google email, a Gmail out from my email account with a link to a website that had sort of the write up of the day, and
Mhm.
it started off really probably way too sporty, and has since really been refined to really cover the pop culture side of things and sort of the more interesting side of sports, the human interest side of sports. And so that's really what we strive to continue to cover and share with people.
I think that's brilliant because, uh,
Thank you.
and as an ex athlete, or I'll say a retired athlete, um, I know that sports is something that brings people together, right?
Hmm.
It's the spectators' entertainment, but it's also a place where the interest, people see sports from different eyes, different perspectives, different viewpoints, and I love that. And so, as you said that you started it and it was a little too sporty, and then you refined it and did that. What made the product become perfect for you? Meaning, what about the talks or the reviews and the conversations and the stories did you love most that probably was the refining piece to all of this?
That's a great question. I would say for me, it's brevity. And that's really important to me, is this short and sweet. There are so many things that are being thrown at us every single day. And we have a tri-weekly email publication, and we have a podcast, and it's a 5-minute podcast once a week. And so for me, it was really important to fit that into the mold of what people's lives already look like, not trying to force them to do something else. And we started with the email publication, and I had friends who would say, "Well, I'd love to. I don't read because I have to drive to school in the morning, and then I have to get to work, and I don't have time. So if you could do it as a podcast, that'd be great. And I could listen to you on my way to school or work." And so I thought, okay, well, I guess well, I don't know how to do that, but we'll give it a shot. And so I think that the brevity is really important to me. I think that is a key differentiator for us, because we really weed out sort of the unnecessary. Not that there's not other things, but we really truly we changed the format of our email blast. Gosh, probably 6 or 7 months ago, and that was really important because we really did give sort of a paragraph about two key topics, and then some short links to about three more. And that way, if that was interesting to you, you could click on it and you could read more, but it's also not infiltrating your inbox with a ton of words. And if you're looking at it and you just want to kind of breeze through, you can say, okay, I saw that like today, there's a Ukrainian tennis player who's donating all of her winnings from her tournament this weekend to the Ukrainian army. So it's just like, oh, okay, cool. I saw that. I don't need all the information, but I just saw that key point, and then I can move on. So that to me is what feels makes me happy, and that may not make everybody happy, but I think that A is a key differentiator for us, is short and sweet. And that's, I want to be able to, our readers are people like me and like you, and we're busy. And so how can we fit in your daily routine without having to, you change your whole life there?
Absolutely. Thank you. And I'm so glad you brought up brevity and that entire aspect. And I want to get to a huge key piece to this for me, which was the collaboration between you and your brother. But before that, I'm sold. Like, this is super
Thank you.
interesting for me. I'm excited to subscribe and do whatever I need to do. Put down a payment on my house to take care of this. Whatever. It's so
We take
interesting.
payment in log cabins. Yeah.
Okay, there you
Yeah.
go. I'll send the blocks your way on a truck. But
Yeah.
it's really interesting, Amy, because the the way that we consume. I mean, when Twitter went big in 2000, and I don't even remember, I'll just say 12, 13, 14. Twitter was that platform to give you a dissemination of just quick information.
Hmm.
And who, for somebody who's been on the platform for a very long time, I'm overwhelmed. Like, I go on there and I'm like, this is not the same content I was getting in 2012. This is crazy. But that ability to just get the we'll call them the executive overviews, or the hotline information. That's
Hmm.
stuff that people care about, because the United States especially, but the world typically lives off of the sound bites and the headlines. Hardly anyone reads the actual print. And
Hmm.
getting just enough information to say, wow, that's impactful, that creates conversation, which creates relationships, which creates business, which creates opportunities, which is the beginning of the snowball to create some movement in everyone else. So I'm so interested in infatuated by this idea that you've created to be the ignition, the starting point for a lot of people to join in
Thank you.
conversation. Have you always wanted to be a uniter of people? Have you always wanted to be someone who generates conversation, or were you just solving a problem that you felt you and your girlfriends had, not being able to relate with other people?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think I've realized my true skill, and as you go through your career, you kind of do refine. What are you good at? What do you like to do? Are you the big idea person? What's where kind of do you fit in that role? And I realize what I really love to do is connect people. That
Cool.
is something that is really exciting to me, and that's why I really love that. You and I talked about this. Is it's so neat to get to meet people and understand how they tick and what you can do to say, you know what, John, let me introduce you to so and so because I really think you would hit it off. And so I think that is something that I love to do. But um, so I mean, it was born out of a need in a sense, but it was also born out of the understanding of this works, and that's what fuels us is those testimonies from people that say, okay, I went to the office and I was able to use this, and it was just fun because everybody's jaw dropped, like, wait a minute, you know what you're talking about. And I have a great story. One of our friends is an attorney, and it was a couple of years ago when the World Cup, Team Iceland was doing really well, and obviously, as we all know, Team Iceland is a small country. I think their head coach was a dentist. I mean, it was this sort of great story, and randomly, he had a meeting and he dropped some Team Iceland knowledge because, that's what we all have hanging around. And because he had guys from Iceland in his meeting. And so it was just really kind of funny that it's great to hear these stories and go, who would have thought that that's how you would have used your information? So it's been very cool.
I I love that. That's amazing, and what a great answer to that, because it leads me into the next question I have, which is the relationship with your brothers. Obviously, you saw an opportunity, you wanted to solve a problem that you had, but you also just had an interest, and this was a way to unite people. Were your brothers just as excited about it as you were? Were they willing to just work with their sister and create this idea for something else? It just sounds like you come from a family of people who care about other people and also are really, really connectors and genuine individuals. But I'm just curious about the relationship with the brothers and where that started. Was it like you looked up to your brothers? They're the sports inspirations behind it, or what connection from the brothers was it that made you start this?
Well, truly the reason I know what I know about sports is because of my brother. He played every sport imaginable. We're talking volleyball to roller hockey
Wow.
to the standard football, basketball. And so, as a sibling, you're forced to kind of sit there and watch and learn. And so that was really truly the foundation that he paved for me. But he really is our sports knowledge. He is the one who watches ESPN all the time. He knows what's going on. He actually works in the sports industry. He works on last night's game part-time. And so he has that great knowledge and he shares that with me, which I've learned so much because every time I get an email that says, here's some content for the write-up, I'm like, oh, I didn't know that was going on. Or sometimes I do, but lots of times I'm learning something new myself. And so it's been a really great opportunity for us to work together on something. He is a phenomenally smart person. He always has great ideas, and I love to pick his brain and sort of just have those brainstorming sessions with him because he always comes up with something creative, something rogue, which I love. And it's been a lot of fun to be able to work on something together.
Amazing, amazing. It's like the true familial mastermind. You guys work really well
There you
together
go.
and create some good. Well, I love hearing that because, um, first of all, my fascination is I too look for the stories that you look for. Those are the things I care about. Having been an athlete, the stories about the people I was racing, the people I was going up against was more interesting to me than who their coaches were and what their times were. That was an important piece for me because I needed to know where their backgrounds were, where they're coming from, so I could really truly put it all out there on the track and field. But I'd like to transition a little bit, and I know that we got about 10 more minutes here or less then to wrap this up. I just love your story, Amy. This is
Thank
such a cool piece, and the deeper I dive into it, I'm like, wow, there's just so much to unbox
like an
here.
onion over here.
As
does everyone.
As does everyone, right? But it only leads me to think that we should have you on a couple segments of this podcast because there's just so much here. But with that being said, your background's fascinating. You've got multiple businesses. You're doing so many great things. You're a TEDx speaker. You know what it's like to communicate really great things with people. I'm sure in here, I mean, no one goes through life unscathed, right? You have so much experience and knowledge. What's at least one nugget of knowledge that you think is absolutely critical for my listeners to know and to learn today that they should take advantage of?
I would say the biggest thing, and I think this really was heightened by becoming an entrepreneur and a parent, is collaboration is key. I think far too often, and I've been there. I mean, I remember sitting at the boardroom. We had a brilliant, I believe it was a COO when I worked at the Diamondbacks, and he would use these big words. And I'd be like, I don't know what that word means. And I'd write it down like in little tiny print on the bottom of my notepad so no one would see. But it was a culture, and a lot of careers and a lot of businesses are those cultures of you should just know it. And people are sort of maybe frowned upon if you ask questions, but you need to ask those questions. And that is something I was not very good at. And it took me a long time to get to the point where to raise my hand and say, I don't know what that means. And it's key because I think you can't know it all. There's no way to know it all. And so that collaboration is so important. And one of the things I do is I serve on the Irish Angels board. And when they asked me, I thought, well, I'm not a finance person. I don't have any background in anything that fits this mold. I don't know anything about closing deals, et cetera, et cetera. And besides kind of what I've done in my personal life, I'm not that expertise. And then I realized everyone has their own form of smart, right?
Yeah.
We can't all be the same. And so I bring that marketing, that PR hat, which is totally different than what other people bring. And so instead of being intimidated, I'm trying to use that as an opportunity to learn a little bit more about some of the processes that I maybe am not key on. That's also one reason I went back to get my MBA was I wanted to understand that. I didn't understand it and I wanted to know better. And so I was better versed at what I was doing. So and we all bring our own kind of smart. So that collaboration is so key because if you don't have that, you're just stuck in your sort of silo in your own lane and you're not getting those opinions. And if you're getting feedback from people, we always say feedback is a gift because it's so important to be able to take those different pieces of information and get different perspectives. And that's a challenge we have of being family working together is we have a lot of the same perspectives.
Mm.
And so that is a challenge sometimes because we see things the same way and we have the same values and the same background. So it's really important to get that extra person in there or another person's opinion just to break it up and make sure you're doing the right thing.
Absolutely. Wow. What an amazing answer to that. I appreciate that perspective. Given that knowledge and that concept of collaboration and that idea, what's probably what's a step or a way to take action based on that information? I mean, there's obviously ways that people today could start conversation with their brother or their family member or whatever. But do you have any keys to collaborating or connecting with people to take a little bit of action based on what you just said?
I would plug into where you're interested. For me, that was part of my career was joining the young professional group for United Way. And that was a great way to meet like-minded people who had sort of maybe not ulterior motives. They did have a good intentions of some sort of volunteer acumen to them. Find those things that really do drive you. I met a lady at a business pitch yesterday who ran the beekeeping club. at
Ooh,
her university. So find those things that start to drive you, and you're going to find those collaborations. Look at those, look for those key things. And one thing I struggle with is women don't tend to have a lot of mentors. I feel like my husband and other men I know have had someone who's sort of taken them under their wing and said, let's talk about life, let's talk about your career, let's meet, let's do all these things. And I don't think women are as good at that. Maybe we're not as good at asking for help. I don't want to draw conclusions on that, but I think that's one thing. And if you, as a younger person, if you in your early in your career and you need direction and you need help, ask for it.
right.
Find someone that you can relate to. I don't care if you're in marketing and you find someone in accounting really interesting. Talk to that person from accounting. Say, hey, could you would you like be okay if we just chatted for an hour a week in just or a month or whatever to just kind of talk through career path, life, good decisions, bad decisions. And so I think that is a huge piece of that is finding someone who maybe can help guide you, but also as those of us who are further along in our career, looking back and saying, okay, who's starting out? How can I help them? How can I just provide them with guidance and just be there for them if they have questions and be available? And that is keeping your door open. That's having a kind face. That's doing the right things in looking out for them. You know, I think women tend to, at least in my perspective, my bosses minus one really good one have all been kind of a little bit vindictive, and
Sure.
that doesn't lead you to have a great mentorship and give you a great growth strategy. So be open to those that feedback once again and that collaboration. And so I would say it's really being aware. And I think the more you're aware of it, the more you think, oh, okay, it's a wine tasting. I love wine. Let me go to this. It's, hey, I see this person struggling or they got yelled at a meeting. Let me just check in with them and see if I can help. And so it's truly being aware, and that brings that connection and that collaboration together, probably more than you really had to really even try for it. It's just being aware of it.
I thank you for saying that. I love that. The majority of my audience is female entrepreneurs. About 60% of
Hi,
them.
ladies.
And I'm so glad you said that, because here I am. I just shared general resources, but the specific that's a good word. There you go. The
That
specifics
one.
words, that word right there, toward them especially is huge. And I agree. There are very few mentors for ladies, and it's so empowering to be able to collaborate and connect together and to build that. And I thank you. But I'm also grateful too, because the same powerful principles you've shared for women are general principle for success,
Absolutely.
and that's amazing.
Absolutely.
That's absolutely amazing. I
And well,
agree.
you know, you say your audience is mostly female entrepreneurs, but you're an advocate. You're teaching, you're learning, you're growing, you're helping everyone. We all it's that collaboration. We're all working together to share different knowledge and share what we're good at and share our version of smart. And so I think it's really outstanding what you're doing to share that message and bring people to the platform, because there's nothing more validating when you say, "Oh, that person also does that." I mean, you find that a lot with children, like, oh, your child also loses their mind after they eat ice cream and they turn into a Tasmanian devil? Okay, it's not just me. Okay. Okay. You know, so I think it's really great that you're sharing that message and sharing that knowledge and in such a positive, uplifting way.
Thank you for saying that. And I'd like to point everyone in your direction. I'd like to highlight you as much as I can. And you
Thank
guys
you.
seriously go check out last night's game. Hopefully I spelled that right, but learn
And
more about Amy, and go connect with her. Lastnightsgame.com. It's going to be a great place to go and get those conversations. I'm already sold. Like in minute one of her talking about it, I was like, oh,
thank
and
you.
this is what I've been looking for. I love those tidbits and those sound bites that we need to use as conversational material. But it's a way to connect with people. And for you, ladies out there trying to learn more ways to connect with your husbands, or vice versa, husbands are trying to connect with the gung-ho sports buff women, like
Right.
that's amazing. Or even just ladies to ladies or men to men, like this is amazing opportunities to continue those conversations. I used to be an athlete. Since I've dove into the public speaking world, I've lost my touch with the world of athleticism, and so looking for conversation starters is a big piece for me. So I highly recommend you guys go check that out. Any other recommendations you have, Amy, to get in contact with you, or to connect with you, or just learn more about what you guys got going on?
I would say I run our Instagram account and I'm on there all the time, much more so than my personal one. So if there's ever something you need, you can definitely catch me on Instagram. Is I'm the one checking all the DMs. So if there's ever anything I can do to help someone or give some guidance or share resources, happy to do that. And we're last night's game is our Instagram handle. And that would probably be the best way. But of course, check out the website and send me notes. I believe that there's just a huge opportunity for us to all continue to do this better. And so let's work together and make everyone grow together, because there's so much more to do, and we're so much stronger together as a group. So
Amazing. Well, I know we're short on time, but Amy, I would like to extend the invitation, excuse me, to invite you back to the show too for another conversation. There's just so much to unpack here. You have such a bright background and just amazing things about you. I have so much curiosity, and I'd like to send my audience towards you. So thank you for doing so. I appreciate your time on the show. Any last words or anything you'd like to leave them with?
no, thank you. Go out there, go forth and conquer. I mean, we always say around here that that it takes how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? So some of these things seem so overwhelming, whether that's a podcast or whatever your business you might be considering starting. Just remember, it takes one step every day, do a little bit here and there. And so, yes, I would think that's what you can do. And I'm going to pick your brain one of these days about book writing, because that is on my list of things to do. And speaking of eating an elephant, that is it right there. So I'll be intrigued to pick your brain about that too.
Happy to help, and you'll be a best-selling author by the time.
Oh, you're sweet. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, Amy. Again, appreciate you, and I know my audience will too. We're all clapping together. Just so much here to learn and your inspiration. And guys, go check out lastnightsgame.com, learn more about that. I know I'm going there. I know what I'm doing right here in the next 2 minutes after I say goodbye to Amy. But thank you for joining us on the Circle of Knowledge podcast. This has been another successful episode, and we'll have her back on the show. Take care, everybody.